Colleague Senator Kelly, because he was here when I walked in the door, and he's, as always, on time. Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Schutz and Ms. Cannington, Mr. Wadja, did I pronounce that right? And Ms. Howell, thank you, all of you, for being here today. This is a very important issue. And this question's for Dr. Schutz. So my state, the state of Arizona, is currently dealing with a rather historic heat wave, multiple days in a row in Phoenix, where the temperature has hit at least 110 degrees. The other day when I was there, it was 118. And it's been above 110 pretty much every day of the month here in July. And the National Weather Service indicates that temperatures are going to remain above average for the rest of the month. And you've probably seen some of these headlines, and I expect you've also seen headlines on the study that found out that if there's a blackout in Phoenix during a heat wave, 50% of the city's population could possibly need emergency medical attention. And Phoenix has a population of over, Maricopa County's about half the population of the state, so over 3 million people. Now, we are fortunate that Phoenix has a pretty strong electrical grid, but these extreme weather events are happening more frequently, and the low temperatures aren't really that low anymore, and we know that older adults are at risk due to extreme heat, and if you're in an older home, you're more likely not to have air conditioning. We've seen that last week with some individuals. You're also not likely to have effective insulation in an older home, or you're not likely to have window shading, all of which can become very dangerous in these times of extreme heat. The federal government, by the way, supports weatherization assistance, which can make homes safer and better prepared to respond to extreme weather events. But Dr. Schutz, are we maximizing the use of these resources from the federal government that supports weatherization assistance?
That's a great question. Thanks, Senator Kelly. The short answer is no. We're not doing a great job of getting the weatherization money into the hands of people who need it and into homes to provide all the sorts of adaptive features that you mentioned. We talked before the recess that there are a number of ways that, in general, home retrofits could be made easier. The weatherization program is undersubscribed. A lot of people who would be eligible for assistance don't know that they're eligible, and so don't apply. It's a very onerous process to apply and get access to that, to go through the screening process for income, to have the home energy audit done. And so thinking about ways to make that easier to access. This also should work nicely with some of the funding in the Inflation Reduction Act that's more focused on energy efficiency, but the two of those together, so things like insulation and replacing windows and doors, upgrading heating and cooling systems, particularly cooling systems in Arizona, those are really important for making the homes safer and healthier for people, and bringing down also energy usage so that people are spending less on their energy bill and the system stays current.
Have there been any surveys done to try to determine how many, like what percentage of the population that's eligible even know that these programs exist?
I would have to look to see. I mean, the programs are pretty undersubscribed. Each state administers the weatherization assistance program a little bit differently. And so some states have been more proactive about doing outreach. Maryland has done quite a lot of that to encourage people who are eligible to know about it. But that's a great question. I can look up those figures for you.
Okay, thank you. And or Dr. Schutz, on a different but somewhat related subject, one of the things I hear from affordable housing stakeholders all the time is the need for zoning reform to allow for some creative solutions to build new affordable housing. And I had some, folks in my office just yesterday, including a woman who has been homeless, and we were discussing, how do we get more affordable housing in the state of Arizona. One of the suggestions, and one of the things that came up, was something that Tucson, Arizona locally did, which was allowing for the construction of accessory dwelling units, ADUs, on single-family properties, but that's not statewide. And these independent living situations are popular and carry a lot of benefits, including proximity to family caregivers, to support older adults and individuals with disabilities. So, Dr. Schutz, in your testimony, I understand you highlighted how zoning rules that prohibit all structures except single-family detached homes create direct barriers to building accessible homes. So recognizing that so much of housing policy happens at a state and local level, can you expand on your recommendations for how the federal government can support or incentivize state and local efforts to pursue zoning reform?
Absolutely. There's actually a lot of experimentation going on at the state and local level, places like Tucson, states like Utah that have been doing state-level reform. And one of the really useful things that HUD could do is keep track of all of the reforms that are going on, make sure that the lessons we're learning for what works and what doesn't in different housing markets is accessible, providing really simple, straightforward guidance. If you want to make ADUs work, here's a 2-pager of the do's and don'ts, so that state and local officials can get access to that. There's a lot of interest by elected officials at the state and local level in learning more about how this works, and there isn't really a good source of information or technical assistance. That would be a very easy thing that HUD could do more of, in combination with targeting some of the transportation and infrastructure funds to encourage more zoning reform.
And we could probably do that even without legislation, I would think. I mean, just encouraging HUD to do that. So I'll make sure that my staff works with you and we can try to address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. Attorney